so. You have a tight schedule today.
Okay.
So probably just the one with the proclamation.
Okay, we have someone reading the Pride one too.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. We have 3 different public hearings. So I think those will go pretty fast. We have 3 action items, so we'll be having a presentation on item 1. Then we've got ordinance for first read and action, actually, right? 907? 907. First read only. Got it. Okay. And then item 3 as well. So, and with a hope of reconvening at 11 back here with an executive session. So there may be some float on that start time. The Fair Board meeting is time certain though, because we have outside Fair Board members for that. So that will need to start at 1. And then after that, we have 2 more items. Is everybody all set?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Then we'll move to solid waste and recycling annual rate review findings and recommendations. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair Harrington, Board of County Commissioners. My name is Mira Samantel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. With me today is Erin Stein, who's serving and has been serving as our interim solid waste and recycling manager. And we are pleased to present the solid waste and recycling collection rate review for your consideration with a ideal opportunity to come back on June 17th with an action item.
Good morning.
Morning.
I will drive this morning. Thank you for having me today. I'm just going to briefly touch on our agenda. I'll go over our purpose and desired outcome. I have a couple of policy questions before your board this morning. I thought it would be pertinent to review our annual rate review process, what the steps are that staff take, and then talk about our interested party engagement for the 2025 rate review. We'll touch on our findings. As alluded to, we have a proposed code change to code 8.04.35. So I'll give some background on that and talk about the impacts that code change will have on rates. We will wrap up with some of our rate equity initiatives and then staff's recommendations. So our purpose today is to provide your board an overview of our annual garbage and recycling rate review analysis and staff's finding for unincorporated Washington County. Our desired outcome is for your board to provide direction to staff regarding the proposed collection rate adjustments and authorize staff to return with an action item on June 17th at the regular. We have 2 policy questions for the board today. Should the garbage and recycling collection rates be adjusted to maintain a 10% return on revenue for our certificated garbage and recycling collection companies? And should garbage and recycling collection rates include an additional 0.5% increase for residential and commercial customers to account for the revenue required to cover the proposed certificate fee increase from 3 to 4%? I'm going to dive into our rate review process. This is an annual process. I'm going to start on the left-hand side of the slide and work to the right-hand side. So we actually start this process each fall where we're assessing different programmatic and operational changes. We will update our detailed cost report template and deliver that to all of our certificate holders in the month of January. And then that gets us to step 1, where our detailed cost reports are due. We take those in on March 15th. Each of our 8 certificate holders submit a detailed cost report, which has programmatic and financial details. Then we take a deep analysis. So staff and our CPA firm, Marina & Company, and I actually have Craig Pope here with me today. They help us assess the results. We do a site visit for the top 3 haulers that make up about 75% of the system's revenue, but we also can do additional site visits or inquiries, just kind of depending on the results or if we have a specific focus area that we're looking at in the rate process. After we've reviewed all of those results, about mid-April, we do adjustments and we consolidate all that data. And what we want to determine is our system's return on revenue. And so that's for all three lines of service. We have residential, commercial, and Dropbox. After that, we determine how much additional revenue the system would require based on those lines of service to get us back to that 10% threshold. We take our findings to GRAC each May. We were there on May 15th of this year. And then that brings us to step 8, which is board's review and action. Our outcome today will ideally will bring us back later this month for a final adoption of approved rates. After the rates are adopted, we do provide 30 days notice to our customers, and then rates would go effective on August 1st, as it has the last couple of years. I think the most important part of our rate review process is our engagement with our interested parties. Each year, we engage with a number of parties that includes the Washington County Haulers Association members, all of our certificate holders, and our Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. This year, staff received comments in March from sanitary certificate holder number 7, SWATCO Sanitary Services. And that certificate holder raised similar concerns to GRAC on May 5th. Their specific request was regarding an issuance of a supplemental rate increase in the rural service area. These comments did lead to a very robust discussion at the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting on May 15th, and I'll cover those details a little bit later in our report today. Overall, the GRAC members did vote. Five voted favorably to recommend staff's proposed adjustments to the board, and 1 did not favorably recommend, citing concerns that rates keep increasing year over year, and that has a real impact on our community. Overall, Washington County Haulers Association was engaged throughout the entire process, and staff find them supportive of our rate recommendations for this year. So I'm going to dig into the findings. As I mentioned, we have our 3 lines of service. We have our residential. So this is any can cart service of 90 gallons or less per week. We have our commercial line of service. This is containerized waste that's 1 volume or larger. And then we have our Dropbox or compactor services. These are occasional or even ongoing services. The customers are billed each time that service is performed. In total, the system did bring in $45,280,948 in revenue in 2024. The income grossed was $2,377,019, and our total return on revenue came in at 5.25%. How we get our return on revenue is we take the total system revenue, we subtract all the allowable expenses for the system, and that is how we come up with the income or the profit. That profit is divided by the revenue, and we land on our return on revenue. We break that down for each line of service. So for 2024, residential was at 4.58%, commercial was at 3.92%, and Dropbox and compactor came in at 10.06%. I want to dig into the factors that were really contributing to our ROR. So actually we saw revenue growth year over year. So strong system growth of 5.4% or a tune of about $2.3 million. But the bottom line is that with even continued revenue growth, we still are being outpaced by operating cost. Direct operating costs increased by about $1.8 million or 4.2%. Some of the contributing factors for this include increased disposal and recycling processing costs, vehicle repairs, and depreciation on new vehicles. We also saw a year-over-year increase on our indirect operating cost to the tune of about $443,000. That was a 7.2% increase year over year, and this is contributed to by employee salaries and the benefits that they receive. So overall, For our lines of service, commercial and residential did underperform. Dropbox slightly overperformed. Just as a comparison to 2023, our total ROR was 5.26%, so very close. But we did see improved performance in both the commercial and Dropbox sectors year over year. It's residential that seems to be slightly struggling. So part of our assessment is what's required to return the revenue to the 10%. And when you look at residential, if we propose a 6% rate increase, that's just about $1.8 million needed in that sector. The impact to the average customer is about $1.72 per month. For commercial, a 6.7% increase and a requirement of about $600,000 in additional revenue. That has upward pressure of about $19.90 per month on a 4-yard customer. And for Dropbox, they actually slightly overperformed, and staff are recommending no rate changes this year. As I touched on, transparency is really a foundational goal, and not only for our division, it's part of our strategic plan, but it's also part of the Metro Region 2030 Regional Waste Plan. And in 2021, we did predict that there would be a point in which our revenue for our division would be outpaced by our expenses. And we had predicted 4 to 6 years, and that time has come. So since we've reached that point, one option that staff identified to increase revenue for our division was through increasing the certificate fees. The garbage and recycling collection companies pay the county a quarterly certificate fee, and that fee is written into code, and today accounts for 3% gross receipt revenue. Staff predict that if the gross receipt rate is adjusted to 4%, that for fiscal year 25-26, our division will bring in an additional $380,000. This decision was uplifted to BELT as part of the HHS budget. And in April, the BELT this increase does serve the greater public good and move this recommendation forward to the Budget Committee in May as part of the county's proposed budget package. Staff are taking preemptive steps to enact the required code change. The process will start this afternoon or today with a reading of the code change by title only, and upon approval of the county's proposed 25-26 budget, staff would return on June 24th to finalize that change. Staff's goal is to have this increase take effect on August 1st, along with any other rate changes. Acknowledging that a certificate fee does have a direct impact on service rates, I just wanted to provide a little context around certificate fees. All the regional governments do collect a certificate fee. That fee ranges from 4% to about 10.5% in the metro region, the average being 5%. Washington County fee has been static since 1967. Staff calculated that the estimated revenue needed to make up the variance between a 3% and 4% certificate fee is about $380,000. And for residential and commercial customers, if we apply that over the 5-month time period from August 1st to December 25th, we would be looking at an additional $175,000 in revenue. Our proposal is to do a 0.5% increase on the rate to help cover some of those additional costs. What that means is that the average can cart customer would pay an additional 18 cents per month or $1.80 annually. For urban and residential customers, that 0.5% would be applied. For Dropbox customers, I'm still proposing no base rate change, but that fee is collected on disposal and recycling processing charges because it is managed as a pass-through fee. I think when we're talking about downward pressure on our return on revenue, one of the impacts is for residential is that we do have a reduced rate program. And the way this program is structured is that all the payers and all the regular rate payers in the system carry the burden of the additional cost. We established this 2 years ago, and our key criteria is that we wanted to be self-funded, provide long-term and ongoing relief, that it was easy to apply for, and that all customers would have equal access to levels of service. And importantly, that we wanted to provide meaningful and needed assistance. With over 67,000 households that we serve, we estimate 2,000 will be on the program at year 4, which was modeled for our peak performance. We're right on pace with our modeling. We had anticipated that in year 2, we would have 500 households come onto the program. We slightly exceeded that with 575 new households. To date, that means we've had just over 1,000 households in total receive this service. There are cost implications with this. We do a point in time estimate, but at the time the DCRs were handed in, $343,000 would be the cost for year 2 of that program, and that is spread across all the ratepayers. So that equals to be about 42 cents per month, or about $5.16 annually. When we modeled it for 4 years, we thought at peak operating time, that cost would be about $8 annually for the average ratepayer. So on to our staff recommendations. I just want to preface that these do include considerations for the rate adjustments that would come with the certificate fee under the code change to 8.04.350. And staff are recommending a 6.5% rate increase for residential, a 7.2% increase for commercial, and no change for Dropbox and compactor customers. As I mentioned, GRAC did vote favorably to recommend these changes to your board. They do have some additional recommendations for your board this year. The committee would like staff to take the necessary steps to assess the potential variations in urban collection revenues and costs versus the rural collection system. It has been since 2009 since we had an economist employed to do this work, so it's probably about time that we take a good assessment. The committee also recommended that staff should consider the impacts that the Recycling Modernization Act will have on the system cost. There's going to be new funding sources flowing into the system, which should hopefully have some downward pressure on our rates. And lastly, the committee supports staff consulting with an economist as part of our rate review cycle. As I mentioned, we haven't done that in a number of years, and that would give us the ability to do a good assessment on the system's health. So now I'm circling back to our policy questions for you all today. And our first one was, should the garbage and recycling collection rates be adjusted to maintain a 10% return on revenue? And the second one being, should garbage and recycling collection rates include an additional 0.5% increase for residential and commercial customers to account for the revenue required to cover the proposed certificate fee increase from 3% to 4%?
You didn't include anything on the GRAC recommendations. They are advisory to us.
Oh, sorry, that last slide was the additional GRAC recommendations.
Yes, I know. I'm noting that GRAC made recommendations, yet your policy questions don't bring forward that we want to weigh in on
those recommendations.
Yes.
Okay.
Simple but obvious. That's
Thank
all.
you, Chair.
So it's not lost on me. We'll add that in. First, commissioners, any questions? A lot of numbers showing you analysis.
I had 5 or 6 things swirling in my head, and all of them were covered in the verbal report, so I don't have any now.
Anyone else?
I just want to say thank you for the presentation, and I've had the opportunity to work with Aaron and Mayor on a variety of different things in this world, and I really appreciate how you are on top of things. I can talk with you about customer issues. I did hear from SWATCO yesterday regarding their concerns. I know others have heard as well. So I'm aware of what those issues are. And I've also attended some of the hollers meetings, and the communication there appears to be really good as well. So thank you for that. And I appreciate the GRAC's recommendations back. I think that that we do need to take a look at those recommendations and consider what it means to have an economist and to look at these things from that perspective. I guess the question I would raise is, what is the cost to do that? And how does that play into the budget?
Thank you.
Do you have an answer to that question?
My plan is to do an RFP later this year. I think it's really pertinent to look at this as a full systematic cost, particularly with the funding flowing in from RMA and also the rising cost of just providing the service in general. So I feel like if we scoped it this year, we could come back with cost. It'd be nice to get a full year of analysis for the RMA funding flowing in. So I would think in 2026, we would work that in as part of our process.
That would include the analysis of the rural versus urban. I mean,
Yes.
would that be worked into the scope of work?
Yes, and it's pretty comprehensive. It's been a number of years since a good can cart weight study has happened in the region. That's the base assessment for most rates because disposal and processing costs make up about 30% of our rate impact. And so as we're seeing changes with the Recycling Modernization Act happening, some of those recycling costs should be coming down. But we will continue to see rising costs in other areas, just like everything from your grocery store bill to other utility bills, costs are going up everywhere. So there's always going to be some upward pressure.
So I actually don't support lumping everything in all at once. As you mentioned, work has not been done since 2009, and we've had a lot of growth in the urban unincorporated area, a much smaller growth percentage-wise in the rural areas, which means the cost of operation for collection can be spread across a larger number of households in the urban unincorporated area versus the unincorporated rural area. We need to look at that urgently now and not wait for all these hopeful things through the Recycling Modernization Act that gets into all of how Metro does this, that, and the other thing to comply with Oregon requirements. That work's going to need to be done anyway. So I think we've got two different tracks that need to be accommodated. But I also think that we should take a look. We're not the only metropolitan county in our area, and I don't mean metro as in metropolitan, that has both cities and rural collection. So I think it would be, even though the collection routes and the certification is different in Clackamas County versus Washington County versus Yamhill County, in Columbia County, I think we need to really take a look at how those rural cost systems work as well. So in terms of the recommended rates for now and the analysis that you've done, I'm fine with that. I would have liked to have heard a bit more about the GRAC discussion on rural than I think we've heard today. But I think what it signifies, especially the difference in time between 2024, 25 and 2009, there's been a lot of change in that time. And we need to act urgently in that regard. So I know that the work that you do is very thoughtful and comprehensive, but I think the urgency needs to be felt on our side, looking at rural collection. No one wants garbage rates to hit a sensitivity point such that people aren't properly disposing of things. But I think we've got to make sure that the firms that do this work in a consistent manner, uh, they show up no matter what the circumstances are, that we support them being in business. So I'm, in terms of your policy questions, I'm supportive of them. The one thing that was not as clear to me as it is to you is the when you switched from the 3 to 4% to the 0.5%, and what the methodology is given those two different rates. So I think what you're referring to there is the the proposed certificate fee will go from 3% to 4%, and that will be felt through the collection rates for the three categories via a 0.5%. Did I catch
That's
that?
correct.
Okay.
And spread over 5 months, not the full 11 months, which would apply to the fiscal year, would be the 380,000. But we're just looking at the rates through December 31st. So it's about 175,000. So that's how it lands at that 0.5%. Then any impact on next year's rates, we would work out through the next rate review cycle.
Yeah,
So the
I had
cost is
problems with
spread.
that too, but I think I have to remember now that this is where this
Oh,
is all
this is the look back.
trailing. We're all
Yes.
12 months trailing.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you for that reminder.
So in essence, we typically would have probably just moved for the code change with no additional increase, but just understanding that this does have an impact on our service providers. This is kind of a stopgap to cover
Yeah,
some of
and
those
we need
costs. They're
cost
not
coverage
known.
for the work.
They're not known, but it's just a projection.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm comfortable with that. So, but I would like us to move forward with all due haste on the rural collection side, and then in parallel, look in a separate track at the Recycling Modernization Act.
You're saying though that you, I mean, in your presentation, you indicated to get at the chairs, urban, rural, the urgency of that, you need an economist.
We don't
Is that or not?
necessarily need an economist. The level of detail that we get to in our detailed cost reports, we have a lot of good financial data, but we're not comparing apples to apples in this system. It really is important to stay within the watershed that we're in framework because we have a lot of shared costs. So if you're utilizing metro facilities or the other private transfer stations, you know, but there's differences, right? If you're in a rural area, you have higher transportation costs and labor costs. But are there ways to minimize those? So it's just getting to a level of detail that we haven't done. I will just preface that it's been a couple very hard years for garbage and recycling operators. We've had years where we've overperformed, and even in 2020 and 2021, we had some of that. And unfortunately, I think we're just seeing some COVID related delays. We had trucks, which are large ticket items, think 600,000 to $1 million on a new truck. Those were delayed and are now hitting the system. And just other changes are going up. It is not easy to tease out urban and rural, but of our 8 certificate holders, we had 5 of them that did not come in with a positive return on revenue. So this problem is not just isolated to the rural service area. All of our collectors are feeling these impacts. Certainly taking a look at changes in the makeup between urban and rural is important. The gap is fairly close right now because 2 years ago we implemented a residential food scrap program. And so we did raise the urban rates to cover those costs in essence. So it's not apples for apples, but certainly it does require us leaning into our rate consultants and doing some deeper analysis, and that does require engagement with all of our certificate holders.
But if you look at the Washington County urban and the Washington County rural columns, there's hardly any difference at all. Yet the distance is much greater. And so I think that's something we really need to look at.
That gap was, when we implemented the food scraps program, that closed that gap. There was about a 5% variation before that program was implemented. I think it's also important when you're looking at our rates, we provide every other week collection. And so I know that as part of Exhibit A, that's very detailed. But if you're looking at like jurisdictions, we have the city of Hillsborough that provides every other week collection, as does the city of Cornelius. But most provide weekly collection. And so when you're running more trucks over the road, that does have upward pressure on your rate. So when you're looking at those different variations, it's not just an urban rule. It does depend on frequency, container sizes, a lot of different operational components.
Just one quick question. So, you said this 3% certificate fee hadn't been raised since a long time ago.
The 1960s.
So, what is that designed to cover?
So it is to support, and I don't have the code in front of me, it has broad discretion of your board to support the general fund.
But what
The work of their division.
Yeah, so it's covering
Mhm.
our division's
their-
operating.
okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, we
Right.
collect those fees.
it's cost coverage.
well, that's what I think that was my question. Is it cost covering?
Well,
Since it hasn't been raised for 50 years.
But we've had,
so that great question, Commissioner Willie, and that is why we're coming back with the recommendation to increase it to 4% because we were hitting that precipice of where it would not quite there yet, but getting close to where it wouldn't cover the costs. So getting ahead of that before we're in that deficit to offset the general fund so that we don't need to request general fund, that the cost of the work that Erin and her team do is covered by those fees.
Okay.
so while the percentage has held at 3%, the system revenues
Oh,
have
yeah.
grown,
Oh, no,
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
now it's at the point where,
It's outpacing. that.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm supportive of the two. I guess I didn't explicitly say this, but I'm supportive of the maintaining the 10% return on revenue and also the proposed 0.5% increase to cover the increased certificate fee.
I'll weigh in on too. I'm in support of the two questions that you raised, as well as emphasizing the importance of doing the rural and urban analysis first, as the chair recommended. I appreciate you bringing life to the one comment of one of the GRAC member about who voted no because of the cost of increase, livability issues here in Washington County. When I was preparing last week this material, I put on the hat as a constituent and to try to respond that with my wallet. But the thing that I appreciated that you did in the PowerPoint presentation in the materials, as well as your presentation here live, is you brought forward the need of why we need to increase and how the inflation as well as cost of increase of everything to do this work is increasing. And when I did the tour, I did a ride along of Pride recently, and I saw, the new innovative material equipment and vehicles that they're implementing, how they want to be, environmentally friendly, but those things cost more. So while I appreciate you doing that due diligence to really explain to the residents that this increase is really needed and telling the story behind why. So good work. Yeah, I think you did your part both in writing and in live presentation. So great job and thumbs up for me. Thank you.
I think you've got support all around.
Yep.
Great.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. So colleagues, we are a little bit ahead of schedule. How about if we take the next few minutes, 15 minutes, and just get through some of board communication? buy ourselves a little bit of time the end of the day. That makes sense? Okay,
We have ours.
so, I don't have any, problem with starting.
Go ahead.
Yesterday, I went to the, day and a half of AOC board retreat. As I mentioned last week, I wasn't sure about the return on investment. But I was reminded that it's always good to get together with our statewide colleagues. There was training that was provided, which led to good discussion. But we also had a whole session on AOC operations and the budget and operational stability. And that was really useful. The Martha Schrader and I were the only two commissioners there from the metropolitan area. So there wasn't anyone from Multnomah County. And I think they're really looking for more presence. They are projecting that they will need to increase the dues coming forward in future years. So that's something we'll have to look at. James Williams probably, I believe, is not going to be running for treasurer in future years. So that's a big hole. He's done very well there, in bringing the information forward and is very, very trusted. But the system works pretty well. When we went through a couple of multiple small group exercises and looked at what are challenges and what will the board need to look at ahead. One of the problems is that some of the members and the board members want to have additional services, but there isn't the AOC staff capacity. And so the board of directors will have to have future conversations about how to navigate those. So I'd say that and the dues are the biggest topics that the board will be grappling with moving forward. And one of the things that that expansion of services is having AOC staff coordinate, having more AOC membership presence in the state capitol. And they just don't have the bandwidth to set that up any further. So anyway, it's going to be a challenging conversation. I press the point that the small and medium-sized counties will probably need to increase their dues revenue, but how that does affect us because the cap is 20 times the base fee. So yeah, so we'll feel it in the end. But looking ahead, we've got the Dartmouth Crossing affordable housing opening this week. And the Hawk budget is out. That is the third of our set of budgets. And so that will be coming to us on June 17th for public hearing and adoption as well. So be sure to put that on your list. And next Thursday, we are having a roundtable, and you all have the draft agenda from that from your, it was in your inboxes a couple weeks ago. So I think that's it from me. Anyone else? Who's next?
I didn't.
I can, I can go.
Great.
I'm looking at my calendar here. Um, last week, I also went on a Pride ride along in their electric vehicle. It was very interesting. The driver said I was bound and determined not to like this. But bound and determined. But as it
The
turned,
driver or you?
the driver,
The driver.
the driver said that, and he said, but it's just been an amazing experience. And his first test ride, apparently a sensor was off, and he was said, "See, I told you it wouldn't work." And then come to find out, they fixed that, and he said, "It's great." And
What is it most notable?
well,
that
there's
likes?
there's a number of things. The cab is very ergonomic. The seat moves as you get out. It kind of helps lift you out. His comment was, I have to do a lot more working out on my own now because of this vehicle.
They're
So
not getting their workout.
he's not getting his workout. But what's amazing, as in many of our vehicles today, the camera sightings all around made the pickup of the cans, made the positioning of the vehicle much easier, and the distance, which relates somewhat to this discussion that we were just having about the rural cost of service, is that they can get in between cans much more quickly than previously because of the acceleration piece without exceeding obviously speed limits, which is one of the issues that the rural haulers face. The other thing that was interesting about it is that the cab does not jostle as much. It's much more stable than the older cabs. So he said you just don't feel as you feel a lot better at the end of the day.
Yeah, you don't get tossed around as much.
But the size of the windshield, he said I had to start wearing sunscreen because I've got the effects of the UV rays.
Wow.
So it was just really interesting. But overall, it was an amazing process too. So, and it was also interesting to listen to the interaction between the hauler and the customers along the way. Like, you didn't come last week, and he said, we had a substitute driver. Apologize for that. If you need, there was just a lot of conversation along the way. So that was a really good experience. Another highlight that I want to make today is the acre discussion that we had last night. We had two excellent presentations. One from our public health division on climate-related programs, and that was, I think, very well received. The other was about our parole officers, and it was a long discussion. Nate provided a lot of in-depth information, and it was very well received. The question of community engagement and how that is going to be interjected came up, and we talked about that. Jason was also there, so Jason, entertain any comments that you have to make as well. The other thing that should be noted here is it was Lily and Sai's last official meeting, and she's been on ACRE since the beginning. She served as co-chair for the last 2 years, I believe, and has done really a good job. So we will miss her. She will be attending the retreat that we have scheduled for June 21st. So she'll be at that retreat. But there's a process for new applicants to ACRE. So the turnover will be there. The other thing I wanted to mention, we're all involved this Friday night in the selection process for Courtney Neron's replacement. I did have,
House District 26.
thank you very much. I couldn't remember. It was going 29, 26, 29, 26. So House District 26. And I've now had discussions with all three, and they were good discussions, and we have really fine candidates that have been brought forward. So pleased about that. With that, I'll turn it over.
Okay, we have time for one more.
All right, I'll jump in. So let's see. I too, staying with the House District 26, I met with Dr. Smith last week, and she also attended the Denim and Diamonds event Saturday night, Family Justice Center fundraiser. So did Nafisa and Pam. Thank you very much for coming for that, and several staff. So I appreciate that. They were a little rowdy, the staff. So, but I figured that was because you were sitting at their table. Ooh, so anyway, but also full disclosure, I've run this through Courtney. Brian Pettinger is the wife of my second cousin who lives in Wilsonville. I've never met her personally. I've talked to her on the phone a couple of times now, but I intend to. But anyway, that is not a conflict, according to Courtney. And so but I want to disclose that anyway, just so everybody knows that. Also met with Tillamook County Commissioner Fournier and update on Highway 6. And then that's going to be an interesting focus for ODOT. Attended, like several of you did, Julie McLeod's retirement party. That was very nice, and we're going to miss her. So I hope she enjoys her retirement time. Attending the Portland Metro Chamber annual event this week. Also, last week's Salmonberry Trail event, we continue the trail executive directors and board continue to get the word out there. So this time we met with the Northwest Trail Alliance, kind of updated on what we're doing on both the coast and here in Washington County. There is an event in Wheeler coming up where they've taken responsibility to develop their part of the trail. So we're going to have that. I think that is July 12th.
Different Metro meeting yesterday on SHS?
Yep, I'm getting there.
Okay, thank you.
Saving that for last.
Okay.
Yesterday's swearing in ceremony, what I thought was fun and different yesterday was that we recognized 4 dogs, canine, on our canine team, and that was fun. I gave one of the dogs a little bit of a bad time by the name of Puddles. So I was sitting in front. I was hoping the dog didn't have a long memory. But anyway, it's just so cool to see those dogs. They are so full of energy and excited and things like that. Some of them are very photogenic. They laid right down and looked right at the camera, and a couple not so much. But anyway, it was fun, and it's always good for us to attend that ceremony. Jason and Pam and I did that. And then, yes, yesterday, went to the SHS meeting in Portland at 4 o'clock, and we went over the Metro Council President Peterson's proposed regional vision framework. So at least we have a draft of where they're going now, and I plan on responding. It's a lot of information. We had all kinds of dots and everything else that we went through, but at least there's something that we can begin to address and deal with much more directly. That's the proposed ballot, if that's where they're going to go with it. They're working on a vision, a mission, guiding principles, and of course, then you get down to the policy side of things. So a lot of more work coming to that, but I think we only have 1 or 2 more meetings. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going on this, but
That's the beginning. But the work that you're describing is the beginning of work, not
yeah,
the end of work.
well, I think what we're doing is we're trying to put the framework around what they want to put out as another initiative in November. I think the general consensus is that it's too soon and there's not enough really good information, positive information to get people to be willing to extend this another 20 years. Also, there was a comment made by, and I can't remember the woman who was emceeing it. It was not Lynn. It was a Metro staffer. Initially, that she was not asking for consensus of the group, nor was not asking for endorsement from the group. So I asked the question, so why are we here?
What were you asking?
Feedback.
She kind of backed up a little bit, said, okay, maybe I shouldn't have used those exact terms. And I said, well, yeah, there's no purpose. If you don't want consensus and you don't want endorsement. So you know what that sounds like. It's like a little bit of a dictatorship. Anyway.
Commissioner, is there those materials available electronically?
Yes, and Maida will be able to forward those on to everybody. And I would appreciate any any kind of, I guess, feedback, comments, we're gonna be meeting. I haven't got a meeting scheduled, but I want to meet with you to go over next steps on this because I have plenty of ideas.
Grace will catch that.
Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
All righty. So it helps our staff to have 10 minutes.
Yep.
In between meetings to set up. So we'll pause here and then they'll have the CWS exec session after the business meeting. And then we'll have the Fair Board reconvene and work session with the Fair Board at 1 o'clock. Okay, thank you.